Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for spending your hour with us today for our Wednesday webinar series. My name is Alice Fox, and I am the Director of Talent Delivery at Talent Connections. We are joined by Susan Kent, the VP of Career Spa, and also John Palumbo, our Director of Marketing for Talent Connections. A few housekeeping items for us today with our webinar today is that this is a 1 hour recorded webinar. If you have any technical questions, please email Jonathan Palumbo at johnpalumbo@talentconnections.net. Participants are muted. Please use the question and answer feature to submit questions. And also, Lawrence will be taking our questions and answers throughout the program, and we'll stop to answer any of those. So please feel free to answer or throw out a question at any time, and he will stop along the way to answer those as you have them. And this webinar is approved for one SHRM professional development credit, and you will see that get that code and credit at the end of the webinar. Today, I am pleased to introduce to you Lawrence Henderson. He is a comfort disrupting teddy bear with 20 plus years in the leadership and organizational development coaching, training, and consulting space, and loves connecting in meaningful ways. The primary goal in his life is to be a catalyst that leads others to give themselves permission to be amazing. I love that. He tells his clients that I can't expect you to drink the Kool-Aid of professional development if I don't do it myself. This played out on the TEDx Youngtown stage, where he put himself in a position as a can-do leader with his mantra, actions over ideas always win. When it's time to let his hair down, he loves letting the wind hit his face while riding his 2007 Harley-Davidson Fat Boy while creating epic memories with his wife, Jupree, of over 18 years, and their fur baby, Chili, also known as Chi Chi. Lawrence, we are so glad to have you here to join us for this webinar. We're so excited about the information on employee engagement, and take it away.
All right, thank you so much. And so when you think about empowering, harnessing excellence, I know all of you have at the top of your mind employee engagement and organizational productivity. Said no one ever. But these are the things, if you look at the research and what this presentation is going to do, and so we're going to talk about a little bit of theory, but also things that I'm engaging with current clients today as it pertains to getting the best out of themselves and the people that they're doing organizational life with. And so we'll go through, please ask questions throughout, so that we can engage you when something just tickles you, when you get to a slide and you just have to ask that burning question. Please do, because again, I believe that makes the content come alive as we navigate through this space today. And so when we think about what this all means, leaning into some takeaways. Here are these very long takeaways that we will be digging into. So uncovering, pivotal yet overlooked facets of employee engagement. How do we implement action diversity and inclusivity, the principles and the practices to achieve organizational success? And then how do we master some practical leadership techniques to enhance team performance that accelerates that growth when we talk about innovation and creativity? And so let's dig in. So as we think about this, I'm going to break these down into 4 different areas. We got understanding what employee engagement actually is, how we can actually enhance it through some strategies, implementing change because everybody loves change, and then making sure that we're empowered to act by the end. Right? So digging into the first topic here, understanding employee engagement and what's the big deal. So those of you who may be in leadership roles or you're supporting other leaders, employee engagement is all about meeting another person where they are as they're experiencing the work that they're performing. And so I was just with a group of leaders the other day, and the biggest thing that kept coming up was their barrier in getting their people to lean in, giving that extra 10%, if you will. And they couldn't figure out why people weren't just motivated by the very charismatic leader. who had kind of one of those halftime speeches when the team is down, and they thought that would do it because it's worked in the past. But they were missing some key elements to what employee engagement is all about. And here's a quick definition that I've come to understand and fully craft. If you think about measuring the emotional investment that people make in their organization's goals and values, there needs to be a personal connection at some point. Now, depending on what your organization's creating as a product, as a service, whatever it is, there still needs to be a personal why. When you wake up in the morning, who looks themselves in the mirror and says, "Self, I'm about to go be redundant and non-productive with this work that I absolutely loathe." And all, like, nobody is having that conversation with themselves in the morning, because we want to be connected to meaningful work, regardless of what the end product is. If you're going to personally be involved with it, physically, mentally, and emotionally, I'm invested. And so these are the things that we're going to lean into. And one of the questions said, what credentials and education are required to earn the title of comfort disrupting teddy bear? Is somebody gave me this feedback because I was thinking about myself as an employee. When I started down this path of work and leadership development, being emotionally invested, somebody said anytime they were around me, they feel like they got hit in the head with a 2x4, but like they felt I was going to give them a hug right after. And so that's the comfort disrupting teddy bear is all about. I'm gonna hit you, but I'm gonna hug you all at the same time. So there we are. We answered that one live. All right. So leaning into the next point. So as we think about why this is important, think about it from the standpoint of at the end of the day, it's not about just rainbows, unicorns, and pixie dust when we're at work and everybody's, woo, I love it here. But employee engagement is about how do we be productive? How do we retain talent while we do it? But then the organization and all the goals are being met. So we actually have organizational success. And so we're going to lean into some of this. The importance around and why this is so important in employee engagement, research tells us higher engagement actually leads to increased productivity, innovation, and employee satisfaction. And so, what these findings actually pointed out were, again, there's a dual focus not only on results and engagement, but its connection to performance. And so, also, if you think about this, who's responsible for your motivation? I kind of answered it already. You're responsible for your own motivation. And so the important part of productivity is we as leaders within organizations and HR professionals figuring out, again, those climate surveys aren't just about finding out if people, love the snacks in the break room or they love the gift card that they got for Uber Eats. It's actually finding out what the motivating goals and what team development we can actually use to enhance the productivity. And so the other parts to this as well are leaning into how this actually impacts engagement when it comes to creating positive atmospheres. And again, this again isn't just toxic positivity where everybody's smiling, but this is also being able to introduce conflict well. Also, again, engages higher dedication when we create these spaces where people are able to lean in to this conflict. The organization supports crucial boosting when it comes to engagement. This is what, again, positive environments are not just about we smile, we high five and hug, and all the rest of those things. It's just we are able to create spaces where people feel supported and nurtured as they engage the work each and every day, right? Next parts of this, right? When we think about engagement versus satisfaction, there's a distinguishing factor between going from just engagement from mere employee satisfaction for clarity and depth. As a leader who does this every single day with leaders, individual coaching clients, I was just on a call right before this started today with an organization. We did 3 days of leadership development, 3 days, where we brought in the senior leaders in this operation plan. And for 3 days, we went through strengths, we went through effective communication, we went through conflict resolution, just 3 days jam packed full of probably the top 10 popular topics in leadership and engagement. Well, the last day, what we leaned into, we're creating actual cultural and social norms of how they'll engage each other. And when they began to lean into this conversation about what it actually looks like to distinguish engagement from mere employee satisfaction for clarity and depth, they were like, oh, so we could actually learn how to fight fair, but also engage with each other and create meaningful moments. And yes, and the other way we said it in that space was engineering opportunities for connection. And so it's going not only from engagement but it wasn't just satisfying. It was really leaning into who they were as people, not just what they do. And the one thing that we use in professional development and coaching is we say we coach people, not what they do. It's the same way when we're talking about building up productivity and engagement within our organizations. Is are the people being engaged, or are you just trying to motivate the position description, right? Just do for us, and then we'll move through to the next thing or whatever we need you to do on a given day. But there's some information that I want you all to help me with as we look at going down this path further. We got a poll for you. And so the poll is about to be launched. What are the biggest barriers to employee engagement? You see the poll now. You're going to have about 45 seconds. Need that Jeopardy music right
I
about
know,
now.
that's what I was thinking too. I would sing, but that's not my gift at all, Lawrence. So, so
I love
that
it.
is not going to happen.
I love it. All right. So as you're taking it now, it's in everybody's head. They can hear it as they take.
Yes, you can all just hum along to yourself. All right, we have almost 92%
Oh,
there, so
nice.
96, so we're doing good. I will give one more second here and then we will close out the poll. We have a clear winner for sure.
Okay. Okay. What's our winner? Woo wee. Thank y'all for coming to play. That was a setup. But those of you, I'm sure you have a relationship, those three, with lack of communication, which for this organization I was just talking about, that was their top one. But when we got finished, they were like, it's really all of the things. And we're going to break down all of these things. So thank y'all for coming to play. That is awesome. All the above. You are right. And the research proves itself out. So here's it, right? This is how we move through this thing. When you think about these three topics, so lack of communication, particularly when it comes to it being essential for feedback loops. And here's the biggest thing, they're often missing. Think about this as a personal need feedback, but how many of us are actually good at giving it and receiving it? And as you see, this research here is saying these are missed opportunities and they're leading to misunderstanding when people aren't provided the necessary information to be excellent at their work. It's another thing. Again, I don't believe, I believe 10% of the population does this, but the other 90% of us, we come into organizations desiring to do our work well. And I believe that other 10%, they just were missing the wrong leader along their journey to be in that 100% of we really do want to do good work, but we have not done feedback well. Feedback that is nurturing, feedback that feels like that 2x4 with a hug. But instead, it's just a whole lot of 2x4 instead of people understanding the connected tissue of why this feedback is important for me. We forget about the very fundamental thing of with them. What's in it for me? But as a leader, add the T, what's in it for them? And so if we reframe and we reposition what feedback actually means for someone else, it actually begins to change our disposition as we give this feedback. An example of that, One of our team members, brand new, threw them right into the deep end of the pool on some projects. And as I was sitting there watching them facilitate, one of the things I know about feedback is it needs to be timely. And during one of the breaks, I called them over and I said, "Hey, great job on this." I said, "But may I offer you something?" Notice what I just did there. I asked for permission before I gave direction. And of course, what ends up happening every single time? Oh, yeah, 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 definitely. So now their posture, they're still postured to receive now. I asked, they now feel in control, and now they're catching the feedback versus getting punched by the feedback. And then I was like, and here's what the last thing I did after I gave it. I think it's, "Hey, what are your thoughts about what I just shared?" It was the way in which I was giving it. And actually, I called them back into the space, not just drop that feedback off and was like, "All right, deal with it." It was like, "No, what are your thoughts about that?" It was like, "Okay, I got it." And of course, here's the crazy part, they didn't agree with all of it, which I'm totally okay with, right? Because I'm not perfect. I just have preferences like we all do. But it was real time feedback. And guess what happened? Their next module that they were up for, they immediately were able to implement the feedback that I gave. Right. And so those are the kind of things. Lack of communication, oftentimes, it needs the practice reps. Inadequate recognition. I would also add to this one, employees and staff efforts are not sufficiently acknowledged, undermining their motivation. Also, with this one, it's giving people recognition how they want it. That's the other part of this. Giving people recognition how they want it, not how you want it. All of these things are platinum rule kind of things, not golden rule. I don't know if any of you platinum rule versus golden rule. Platinum rule, again, doing things how others want them, not how you want them, right? And so recognition, here's the thing for me. Anybody else out there, words of affirmation? I'm a words of affirmation person. If a well-timed, well-specific piece of feedback from me, you have me gassed up for about 6 months straight. And I'm running through walls for you. I don't need the money. I didn't need, if they call it the soldier in me, but I grew up, my dad was a coach and all. And so I knew how to use that internal motivation. They scratch that itch and it motivates me when it's specific, timely, and it speaks to how hard I've been working. Those things, that's how I like information. And so here's the thing that I did as a leader. I modeled it for my people. Throughout my career, I told my people how I actually like recognition as your leader. And here's the thing, how do you like it? Creating these win-win spaces. So inadequate recognition, limited career development. That's also was a part of that conversation I was having earlier. They just had an employee leave the organization, and the thing that they said in their exit interview was, "I didn't feel like I could grow here." And it wasn't for a lack of the organization having training opportunities. It was that the communication, go back to step one, the communication from their direct leader, they weren't aware of what the organization actually offered. But this person thought my growth is being stunted. And of course, here's the other thing. They didn't ask. So they didn't have a leader talking to them, and they didn't think to ask. And so now you had these opposing forces, they thought, say, somebody's just trying to keep me from my next level. No, nobody knew. And that's what the leader said when they got the feedback. They were like, "Hey, did you know so and so wanted to go to training, wanted to do these things?" No, they never said anything. Well, again, these are the things that happen a lot of times in organizations. Those are the barriers, the internal personal barriers. And here's one tidbit I say out loud is closed mouths don't get fed. And so oftentimes people assume that leaders know or they can read and read the tea leaves and they get a spidey sense when somebody wants to be developed. But no, this is another thing to practice, people having the ability to advocate for themselves. But again, this limited career development or the perception that there's a limitation in career development also can stunt professional growth and actually have people to disengage. And again, if there are any questions throughout, throw those in there. Here's the other parts: impact on staff and any faculty, whether you're in higher education or you're in a corporate environment. these big parts of declining morale, reduced productivity, and then the long-term disengagement. We saw this play out, y'all, real time with the Great Resignation or the Great Migration, where people were jumping organization to organization. And here are the things that really this research really points out in all of these three different articles is really people who were trying to ground on what work meant to them from a core value sense and really keying in on who am I inside of this work. And oftentimes, what people were beginning to see and where that morale was declining was that when people didn't see themselves in the work. And so that we're like, man, I'm doing all this, spending this many hours, and I'm not seeing myself in the work. Now, I'm not going to be all that motivated to do more of it. And then over time, what am I replacing that engagement with? I'm replacing it with Twitter or X. I'm replacing it with walking breaks, longer breaks, whatever it is. Or like I was on my way out the door, last organization, and hopefully nobody is on the call right now, looking for other jobs. That's where a lot of my disengagement time went to, focused, updating resumes and LinkedIn profiles. But those are the kind of things, these are the consequences when it gets this far. Okay. So, how can we address these challenges? These three areas we're going to lean into over the next several minutes, right? Fostering a culture of recognition, enhancing communication and transparency, and then how can we really put together a portfolio for professional development and career growth? So, the next pieces of this, the first one, this is all about fostering a culture of recognition. I just said it, personalize it. Whether you have a robust budget for benefits or all the rest of these, lean into making connections with people to personalize their recognition. There are maybe some of you out there who love public recognition, but there are others who, again, find out where somebody's favorite place to eat is and get them a gift card. It's connected to something they achieved, not just a generalization. The other part, being able to actually pull people into public acknowledgement, right? Whether that's an email, whether that's an announcement. And again, making these things not just, oh, hum ha, here we go again. We're having another quarterly meeting where everybody gets recognized, but make it be, again, specific, measurable. And again, it's something that shows impact. But then here's the thing, feedback should be like anything else, it should be a conversation that happens often enough so people don't flinch when it's time to have these conversations about how we can be better. And it shouldn't only be when something goes wrong. This is how you don't turn it into a culture, but it turns into something that seems punitive when you're talking to me. I'll give you a perfect example of it. Who remembers getting a sticky note or the email message that says, come see me? I know y'all can't talk back to me, but I bet some of y'all flinched and y'all remember a person, a place, the last time you saw that sticky note. Come see me. Well, again, in our minds, feedback or getting a talking to is associated with I did something wrong. Make good, bad, indifferent feedback, constructive feedback, make it regular enough so people receive it as the gift we try to tell people it is. So that's how you end up fostering a culture of recognition is engaging, right? How many of you would be in long-standing relationships if you only got talked to once, twice, or even four times a year? You probably wouldn't stay in those relationships. But that's been our normal as it pertains to performance review, performance engagement over time. It's very singular, it's very specific types of conversations, but make it regular enough so that, again, people desire it and they actually hear it in the context in which you're trying to deliver it versus this actually being an operational phrase. And I know you all finish it for me. I can't hear you, but finish it for me. It's not what you say, it's and I believe you said it's how you say it. It's a thing. But if you give regular feedback enough, we'll begin to minimize the tone of things and actually hear the words for context, right? So, next one, enhancing communication and transparency. The way that you build this out is, I also would add in here in front of the word transparency, is operational transparency. Creating those open forums where people get the opportunity to lean into the organizational change that's happening. But you can't do that in silos. One organization that I heard about and I'm potentially supporting, they're considering a merger with another organization. Well, one of the leaders who's reaching out to me is saying, Lawrence, we may need some OD work. We may need some organizational leadership support because our leaders don't think we know what's going on. Here's the thing, y'all. People already know. You want to know how they know? Because when big change is coming or anything needs to happen, senior leaders start getting weird, start acting funny. And so people's spidey sense begin to go off. But create open forums about the change, the operational transparency and change that you can communicate, right? Without derailing any of the other plans. Because here's the thing that ends up happening. You get support when it's time to make transparent decisions. You get lean in, people buy into what they can weigh in on. And so this is how you actually do it. Enhance that communication by bringing people along with us. And here's the other part that you get with this, the practice of effective listening. When it's time to be transparent, how you get people's emotional triggers down is, again, don't just include them when it's decision time. Include them in the process to get to that decision. Again, when people have the opportunity or feel like they weighed in, then oftentimes they'll buy in, won't like it. And again, you're not going to get 100% across the board, but at least you won't have so many detractors when it's time to move forward with that plan. So again, these are strategies for enhancing engagement. Next, professional development. Ooh, I love professional development. Y'all, I love professional development so much. I am getting a PhD in organizational leadership, where I am talking about addressing the gaps in leadership development and their impact on employee engagement and productivity. Exactly what we're talking about today. And here's the biggest parts of this: tailored development plans for individuals and organizations. If your organization is doing commercial off the shelf training, hopefully that's for sustainment, not as a common practice to upskill. Now, there may be some new topics you may be introducing that are a LinkedIn learning course. I believe those are sustainment type of learning environments. But having a tailored development strategy for your organization so that it's specific to your core values, it's specific to your initiatives, so that people can lean in and they can have targeted development. Mentorship programs. I've been out of the Army for almost 10 years now. And in that time, I've only ever had one professional mentor in 10 years. Had several professional coaches that I've sought out myself. I have several leaders who I go to lunch with, I talk to. And of course, I believe that's a shared relationship, whether you're corporate or you're out private and you run your own company. But mentorship is an essential piece of professional development so that you can actually have somebody that may have the scars, may have the bumps, may have the bruises, and are able to help you steer and navigate. But this is a part and should be an intentional part of your personal and professional development, is getting that mentorship program. And if you're a leader out there in charge of professional development programming for your organization, making mentorship intentional and tying it back to performance. If you want to be a leader in this organization, or if you want to get promoted in this organization as a leader, offering up your services as a volunteer for our mentorship program. And I would tell you, having a mentor inside of a corporate space did so much for me from an acceleration standpoint in my business acumen and maturity, because it was a lot of our senior leaders who volunteered to be mentors. And I never forget, I was had the CFO of a organization as one of my mentors, and just them giving me access to the things that they use throughout their career to develop themselves. The books, you see many of the books on the wall because those came from recommendations from my mentors that I grabbed, I used, I absorbed, And those are the things that have pushed me to this point today. And then, of course, opportunities for advancement. This also goes back to the transparency conversation. If you're in an organization and there are not opportunities to go up or across or out, whatever it is, being transparent with that. I never forget an organization, group of engineers. I was supporting their professional development strategy as they were trying to grow themselves. They were flat. Almost every single leader that was in position had been in their position either 1 to 3 years. And inside of this organization, tenure kind of leaders kind of stayed in their role for probably about 5 to 10. And so they were already early on in their current roles. And I asked this leader, I said, how are you communicating this to your staff? Because you have a lot of people coming to this organization, you have a lot of open roles at the individual contributor level. So how are you communicating to them that there's no upward mobility, but there may be opportunities outside of your group? And so they were like, we're not. And so as a part of their professional development and career growth plans for their department, we began to help them create a communication strategy. And here's the crazy thing that happened. Out of almost all the other departments inside of this organization, they had the highest retention. Why? Because they communicated what opportunities were available. And here was the craziest thing. A lot of the individual contributors in their department, because they were getting mentorship, because they had tailored development plans, they got opportunities in other ops groups across the entire organization because they were being groomed, because they were being communicated with, and they leaned in to say, well, hey, I heard about this maintenance manager job over here. Is that something that I could put my name in a hat for? And of course, the leader supported, hey, go do a day in the life of to see if that's something you want. And it created these spaces for people to learn not only about what they wanted, but about the organization they were serving. And so, again, professional development and career growth, it's a contact sport. Just like with all of leadership, this is a contact sport where this should be a two-way street of communication, engagement, and connection. All right, next parts. So, how in the world do we create goals and objectives around implementing any change that we need to push out there into the world? The biggest thing here is make them realistic. That's the biggest thing with any goal is, of course, not just smart goal, fast goals, whatever the things are. Come back to, are they realistic in the time frame in which we're asking about? So today we've been talking about engagement. We've been talking about productivity. Connect people to reality of where you currently are and what's changing inside of your organization. We often say, again, how many of us are the same person we were 20 years ago? None of us. I can't even wear the same clothes that I wore 20 years ago. Can't fit them, right? And haven't been able to fit them for some years now. However, I am fitting in the clothes that I'm in. And I am this version of Fluffy, and I love it. All right. And so these are the things that when we talk about implementing change, create current engagement levels as a benchmark, right? The new realities that your organization is experiencing, that's what you should be leaning into. Again, another example of this is, how did your organization respond to the pandemic? How did you personally respond to the pandemic? That in and of itself was a change management project that some of us still are experiencing from a mental wellness standpoint, an emotional and cognitive standpoint. Everybody was experiencing that change, that intense, immense change at the same exact time. And it's the same things that happen organizationally. And so for us, creating realistic goals and timelines to actually lean in and do change well. That's what this is all about, folks. Next, here's the thing, finding out who our stakeholders are and getting buy in. This is about engaging our leaders and leaders engaging those who are serving. And then this is also about getting our faculties and staffs on board, getting them involved in the change. Because again, if we go back to how do we become innovative and creative, it's us getting people to come alongside us while we're going through this change and not being know-it-alls. There's an amazing article out there along with this one here. It's called Leader as Coach. And one of the biggest elements in this Leader as Coach article is it communicates not only the benefits of buy-in, but it also the benefits of communicating when a leader doesn't know how to do something. You then begin to empower others to be for us. And so gaining buy-in from stakeholders above us, beside us as peers, and below us, these are the elements of getting them into the game and being able to communicate that. Next part, implementing change and digging into how do we actually monitor it? Because at the end of the day, we need to be able to practice what we're doing and if it's working or not. And if I have any assessment or data analytics folks out there, shout out to you because I love to pull the data, love to do an assessment that matters to see how we're doing and do those regular check-ins. This is us as leaders drinking our own Kool-Aid to actually receive that feedback that we want to lean into. And of course, again, doing it in different ways, not only how people learn, but also how people love to give feedback. It's not just having quantitative, right? Just scale of 1 to 10. What is this thing? Qualitative as well, so people can actually give you narrative, how they're feeling, how they're doing. But then, of course, with this information, being able to create adaptability and flexibility in how we engage within the organization and repeat. So we do some things, implement some things, but give ourselves the opportunity to receive feedback, monitor and evaluation so that we're in a iteration process, not everything's being written in pen. And I would say the biggest gift of the tragedy that happened from the pandemic is the belief now that we write things in pencil, not pen. So we can erase and we can adjust and we can move forward. And so that is we're in iterations and seasons. And so your organization should be operating that way as well. Right. So next part to this is how do we do this full time? The biggest way that we do this full time is we plan it, we implement, we improve, and then we evaluate. If you could take a picture of this slide, that's up for you right now. You plan it, you implement it, you evaluate, you improve, and you repeat. These are the things of how you should create sustainable practices. This is us being agile. This is us being creative. This is us being innovative. And this is how we practice not being tied down to our own imaginations, our own only way of doing things. This is how we always done it. You haven't done it on this side of the pandemic. So that mindset should be reframed. Of course, you're going to have your bread and butter plays for your organization so you can sustain customers and clients and making money. But there's also where it makes sense, plan, implement, evaluate, and improve. All right. And then do it again. So these are the things that we really need to lean into. And so hopefully our time today, you learned something valuable about productivity and engagement. And if you have, I would love to get some feedback on that. So take a couple seconds, scan this QR code to give me feedback. Because again, like I've been saying, I drink my own Kool-Aid and I love feedback. And so take this, got a good little gift at the end of it that you'll be able to receive. And I'll be quiet playing the music in my head while you do this.
Thank you so much, Lawrence, for all this
Mhm.
information. That's great. I would encourage everyone while you're scanning the QR code or putting in the going to the website to definitely, if you have a question for Lawrence, now that we've got him here, definitely put into the question and answer box and we can answer those live on the air so everyone can hear them. A couple notes that I took. One of them was the platinum rule. I
Mhm.
love the platinum rule. That was um, great. And then also, I guess one of my things you did talk about, engaging leadership. What would you say is the number one thing to do? Like, what would be first step? I mean,
Yeah.
really elementary step. A person is listening to this and is like, gosh, I really would love to make a change in my organization. What would you recommend being that first step that they should do?
Yeah, so it's finding out for themselves if you're the only one, right? Oftentimes we feel like we're the only one that is needing to see this change, but it's also goes back to that assessment and evaluation. And so if thinking it's a unique change, nobody will listen to me, there's probably others, right? That's like being in one of these forums and somebody like, well, I don't want to ask that question because I think it's a dumb question. Well, you may not be the only one with that question. And so as an employee or as that leader, it's something within you that says it's meaningful for you. And if we go back to the beginning of the conversation, that drives motivation and engagement, because if it's meaningful to you, guarantee it's probably meaningful to someone else. And so be curious around that change that you're wanting to have a conversation about, and then begin curiously socializing it with your leader, just to ask those questions of what will the change impact, because that's oftentimes where resistance is met is, hey, you think this can happen overnight. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. So practice socializing that change initiative. And then that way you kind of get that practice and you kind of get it curated by some other peers. But before taking it to those senior leaders who, if they're hearing it for the first time, those conversations may not go well. So being able to socialize it and practice delivering that curious question.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that
All right.
information. Excellent. Anybody out there have a question for Lawrence? Here we go. Can you talk about equity
Hmm.
considerations in the workplace for feedback and professional development? Many
Definitely.
corporations want to put training behind high performers, but low engagement might be due to inequitable practices.
Yes, yes, yes. So, David, thank you so much for that question. I was one of those impacted by the high performer tag before I understood what that actually was. And I learned later that it wasn't because of me, it was actually because of who I was under. My leader wasn't a nine boxer, top right, high potential. And so I got missed as an employee. And so one of the things is, as it pertains to equity, is making development a sustainability and retention strategy so that it is not just for high performers, but it's a part of who you are. So just like core values should it be, again, in equitable practices, it should be about who we are, not just another thing we do. And so oftentimes training and development programs do not have the actual resources to do multi-level sustainability training. And so one of the things I would say, if you're inside of an organization and that's happening, or you know of one, is getting them, similar to the question that Alice asked earlier, is introducing them to the potential idea of outsourcing training, and to the extent that they're an extension of a development strategy, so that people can sign themselves up for their professional development, so they can sign up for the workshops presented by an outside third party source, so that again it becomes a sustainability practice, not something I have to wait for or be nominated for. And so the organizations that we support, that is exact, like we become their learning and development strategy, and we help them with that plan, so we're hitting all of their employees, not just people who have been earmarked as high performers. Hope that answered there.
Excellent. Thank
Right.
you so much for that, for sure.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I think we're getting closer to our time here. Oh, here's another one. What are some of your suggestions to engage someone in a smaller organization where those opportunities to advance are limited?
Yeah. So it goes back to the feedback, right? Finding out from that person. Oftentimes when I, as an individual contributor, and I've been there, where my only request is promotion, that's oftentimes because I didn't understand what else was available. And so here's that opportunity for you as a leader to become transparent in what's available to them, whether it's outside learning and development, whether it's in preparation for opportunities. And I would also say, too, transparency about the growth strategy of the organization. It may not be today, but with reasonable operational transparency to say, hey, the future is looking up. We just got the quarterly reports. This is the growth pattern of the organization. And if promotion is a part of that, promotion has to be a future focused goal. But as of right now, we can make sure you're ready for that. And so this is about building up your bench strength, right? I had one leader called it our hit by the bus strategy. If you are out of the office tomorrow, can this person step into your role? And so you get them focused on being developed to be you, not just be promoted somewhere in the organization. Oh, hopefully that helped, Tim. Say, how do you end up being an organizational development consultant? So I run my own company, and so that's one way. But it's through partnership with other organizations who are looking for a partner with developing a robust development strategy for the organization. And it's not just, hey, we need some team building training, or we want some other things that, whether it's strength finders or anything else like that. But on the organizational leadership side, we understand it's about structure. It's building out, again, a foundation. So it's, again, I like to say we do the dirty jobs of leadership and professional development, because we go in and we foster disposition work. So we're really leaning into all of those things I mentioned, in addition to, are you structurally sound, which is the other elements of OD, OE, and organizational leadership. And so we go in with a holistic plan of how to fully integrate their development strategies.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank
So
you.
yeah. So if you want to contact with me, hopefully this is another QR code. This is all has all our socials and all the other stuff that you can get access to us, as well as any program guides or anything for our organization. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute blast being with you today. And here's our question
Perfect.
slide.
Yep.
But yeah, but I
we
think we're
I
good.
think Yep, I think we did that. If you want to go to the next slide for us, awesome. A quick thank you so much, Lauren. We appreciate all of your insight and about this topic. It's so awesome, especially during today, when the retention and trying to figure out ways to keep our employees engaged and with our companies instead of moving. So we appreciate everyone joining us today for our Wednesday webinar series. A little bit about us, Talent Connections. We are a human resources professional services firm specializing in executive search and HR consulting. We are located in the Atlanta area, but not all of our searches are in Atlanta. We just placed an HR manager in Miami, Florida, and we are currently working on Associate Director of HR in Houston, Texas. To learn more about these and other opportunities, please visit us at www.talentconnections.net. We are also celebrating our 25th anniversary this year in this space, so we're very blessed with that. Also, we have a sister company, Career Spa. We are an outplacement service provider, providing career transformation, career transition, and coaching services tailored to the specific individual. Please visit us at careerspa.net to unlock your potential for the next great opportunity.